Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ReQuest. It's me, Captain Logan, and joining me as always is my co-host Austin, the Day Ghost.
What's up?
And tonight we've got another ReQuest / Comic Vault, which is why we let in with the Comic Vault music. Tonight we're going to tackle Batman and the Monster Men by Matt Wagner, which was published in 2006, and this was requested by Bill Mills on Patreon. Thanks a lot to him. Getting excited, Austin, whenever we get comics on the show, because we've been wanting to do a lot more comics lately, and it lets us cheat, because then we just have a easy spot in the week where we're already talking about comics. We don't have to work it in anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Nice and simple.
Appreciate that. Is that me saying I wish people would pick comics more than movies? Yes. I mean, I love talking about movies. Don't get me wrong.
I'm going to say you be the judge, but now just yes.
No, just yes. At the moment, I don't know. I've been really enjoying all the comic talk on the channel lately. I've been getting a lot of compliments about bringing more of that back. And so this gives us an excuse to do more of that. And also, this is really good timing. I hope I'm not stealing your thunder when I say this, Austin, because this was something that you and I kind of had a conversation about a little bit off camera. But this is really good timing with Caped Crusader, because this story feels very in line in tone with that, to the point where at places I had to remind myself that things that it was reminding me of were not in the same continuity. That I've been watching that show in preparation for the review we're going to do on Sunday, and I'm on my second watch now, and that and this blending together a little bit in my mind, because this so easily could have been an episode.
Well, I don't know if you remember
of that show.
What was it? 2012, I think. There was that big anniversary short that Bruce Timm made.
Oh yes.
And that was like a Golden Age Batman versus the Monster Men thing.
Oh, I forgot it was Monster Men. Yeah, and everybody said just make it a show, and
Yeah.
then they didn't exactly do that, but it's similar. It's along some of the same lines.
Mhm.
It's not stylized in exactly the same way.
Yeah, exactly. But like, there's elements of that.
And that was a silent thing, I think,
I think so.
or nigh silent. But I don't think anybody talks in that.
I know. I'm pretty sure it's at least black and white.
It is in black and white. Wasn't that like 4 or 5 minutes, or even 2 or 3? Like, it's real short.
Something like that. Yeah, it's really short. I feel like it's just kind of Batman landing and fighting the Monster Men.
That was for the 80th anniversary, right?
I think so. Something like that.
Monster Men is one of those things that I always hear about but don't know a ton about, and then I read this and I enjoyed this. I mean, I'll throw that out right away. This will be a fun discussion. But I still don't fully, completely get what the hubbub is about with just like the basic idea of this. It's like, okay, genetically engineered giants made by Hugo Strange. The end. I don't get what the big deal is about. They like Austin, you keep going like, oh, I need more Monster Men and things. I'm like, why? They're just big brutish monsters. Like, it's, I don't know. What were you gonna say?
No, I just said I love the Monster Men. Like, you show me Hugo Strange, and I'm like, okay, now the Monster Men. Like, that's
Can
my
you explain why, or is it just that you're a horror guy, you're a monster guy?
Yeah, I just think they're cool. I don't know, like there's something different for Batman to fight. Like, they're these big, like overpowering brutes. And then I think like the eugenics thing with Hugo Strange is interesting.
Sure.
That's my big thing with Arkham City. Is I think Arkham City, how you end with Hugo Strange is kind of lame. And from a gameplay perspective, I'm like, it would have been so much cooler if you got to the top of his thing and you fought the Monster Men. It would be way more memorable.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Well, and Ra's al Ghul could have been, because I never could decide how I felt about those two in league together. Like, I felt like Ra's al Ghul could have easily been written out of that game and didn't really need to be there. But his like funding such an endeavor would have made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of the Ra's al Ghul thing. A part of it for me, just from a basic story structure thing, is I've always thought it was really weird that you beat him like 3 hours into the game, and then at the end of the game he's like, I was behind it all. And I'm like, yeah, but like, I kicked your ass like 5 hours ago.
Welcome if you're watching live, folks. I appreciate it. Feel free to interact with us in the comments, and we'll take a look as we go along. Tyler says, are you seriously asking why Austin likes the Monster Men when his favorite superhero is Man-Thing? I'm more generally asking why the Monster Men keep kind of coming back as a thing, because I just haven't I had not read this before,
Hmm.
and I know
When
that
they go back to Golden Age.
that goes back to 1941. Yeah, I did know that, but like I don't know, they just seem a little bit generic to me. Like it works fine in the story, but that's not what I found all that interesting about the story.
Yeah, I mean they're not interesting as characters, but I don't know. I just think they're cool.
Well, that's okay. They don't have to be, but even just on a superficial level, it's like okay, they're just big giant guys. I don't know. Like I I don't always understand people's fascination with monsters in the first place. That's not exactly my jam, and
Hmm.
I'm really I don't mean to get off on the wrong foot with people with this that are coming in here because they love this kind of stuff. But I'm really picky when it comes to horror stuff, and monsters is just an idea. Also, I think maybe part of the problem for me is that this kind of pulp I like Batman fighting old school monsters and even Universal type monsters with Dracula and stuff is a thing that in the last I don't know I'd say like 15 years comes back a lot more than like when I was growing up we didn't do as much of that and now I feel like I see it all the time so it's not really that special now like maybe in '06 this is a bigger deal but like I'm kind of sick of Solomon Grundy and when I read this, I'm like, it's kind of like Solomon Grundy.
Yeah, and I'm not the biggest fan of Solomon Grundy. I can take him or leave him, um, so that's fair.
I won't harp on this the whole time. This is a good story, but like, do you at least sort of see where I'm coming from? Like,
Yeah, no, I can see where, like if it's just not your bag, I get it.
yeah,
I mean, I
well,
love Killer Croc and nobody gets it, so I can understand.
yeah, but Killer Croc's at least like a cool big crocodile guy. Like these guys are just human beings, but 10 feet tall, and they lumber around, and they're cannibals. Like that's it.
Yeah, yeah, they're cool.
Okay. I mean, I'm basically asking you to explain a taste thing, which is impossible to do.
Hmm.
But I was just wondering if there was something here that I wasn't that I wasn't seeing. I never want to start a review by going, "This isn't my thing, therefore I don't care." Like it's not that.
Hmm.
But
No, and I like
that's why I
that.
was getting it out of the way at the start, where I'm just like, "Am I missing something? Is there a reason the Monster Men are cool?"
No, and I mean I like Batman that when he fights things that are way more physically imposing than anything he could deal with.
Sure,
So like that's
yeah.
part of it too. Like,
Okay, but that's part of why I like Bane, and you don't like Bane.
oh, but the Monster Men are better characters than Bane.
Well, and obviously you and I are just going to agree to disagree on that
No,
because
I'm just joking. But you get it like a mix where it's like you have that aspect, but then I also really like Hugo Strange, and
well,
they're
yeah,
like connected. Like it's not like I'm like, ooh, the Monster Man. Like they're connected.
but you want that to be a thing he's doing.
Yeah, well, just 'cause I think that's a classic Hugo Strange thing.
I think it's really interesting. Just in, and we'll do a synopsis here in a second. I think it's really interesting the way Wagner sets this up, where Hugo Strange is starting with genetic engineering, and obviously that's always a big Hugo Strange thing. And then because of his run-in with Batman in this, he starts to get fascinated by the psychology of Batman through this whole thing, and then there's just this kind of new obsession on top of it, where it's like he's trying to control genetics and create the perfect specimen, and then he accidentally runs into Batman, who he sees as the perfect specimen. So then it stops becoming as much about trying to create that, so much as trying to become that, and
Mhm.
that's when he starts like putting on a bat suit and like really weirdly trying to emulate Batman, and he starts to get uh like really jealous of Batman and wishes he could be him, and that's the aspect of Hugo Strange I've always been most interested in, and so it was really cool seeing the connective tissue and the transition, getting him from A to B with that.
Mhm. No, absolutely. And well, I really love there's the conversation that he has at the party where he's like, "Oh, these are the things we can get rid of," and the woman's like, "Oh, you mean like people don't have to be short anymore? Yes, they don't. They can have perfect vision. Yes, they don't have to be bald. Yes." And it's like, "Oh, you're doing this for the betterment of mankind. I gotcha."
And then his response to that is kidnap her and try to turn her into a monster,
Well, to feed her to
or
the
feed her
monster
to
man.
the. But yeah, I couldn't remember if she was if she was gonna be a subject or if she was food.
No, she's just food. Her and her drunk boyfriend.
I also we'll look at art here in a second, but I also love the way Hugo Strange is introduced in foreshadowing that whole he wishes he could be Batman thing even
Mhm,
before he meets Batman and knows for sure that he's not an urban legend.
mhm.
That's fantastic, and it got me for like 3 or 4 panels, and then I realized, oh yes, because it's in silhouette and like it tries to make you think that it's Batman, and then after a bit, it's like I've been perfectly building up my body, but then I found out that my genetics suck. It's like that is it's perfect. It's the absolute best possible introduction to Hugo Strange. To
Yeah,
the point
yeah.
where I almost want to introduce people for the first time to that character through this book.
Oh, sure. I mean, this and the Englehart stuff, some of the best Hugo Strange material you can give people.
Incidentally, that's also like why I like Vengeance of Bane so much. Is introducing that character through the lens of they're a twisted version of Batman in some way, and we talk about this all the time. Where like a lot of Batman's characters are the flip of Batman in some way, or a mirror, what have you. But I like these characters that like you're through the prism of Batman from their perspective in the first place.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And so I read this book 11 or 12 years ago now. I can't remember. But instantly, like, I get to that page, the one you were talking about with Hugo Strange, and I was like, oh yeah, it's Hugo Strange. I remember this. This is all coming back to me. And then I keep reading further, and I'm like, okay, like some of this isn't. I don't really remember. And then the second we get to the Monster Men stuff, it was like, oh yeah, I remember this panel even. Like,
Yeah, you said you were really surprised by how much of this stuck with you.
yeah, it was quite a bit. Like, there's things in the middle that didn't stick with me as much, but I've always remembered because I read this and Mad Monk around the same time. Like, I think I got them at once and kind of read them back to back. And the only things I really remembered, if you were just to say, "Hey, remember these books?" I'd be like, "Oh yeah, they're really good." But all I remember is that in Mad Monk, Batman kills a wolf, and that's always stuck with me. And then as I was reading this, I was like, "Oh yeah," and like this is the part where they all, like rampage through Falcone's country house. This is the part where Batman gets locked in the cell with the monster man. Like I remember
Yeah.
all this.
Yeah, that didn't go exactly where I thought it was. I thought Hugo Strange would get a lot closer to actually turning Batman into a monster. And
Hmm.
then I was like, it probably makes sense that Batman got out of this quicker than I was thinking he would.
It's the Batman Titan thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, before all we're gonna do is compare this to the Arkham games, I guess. Anyway, before we get too far into the story, and here in a little bit, I'll ask Austin to give us a real quick synopsis. But let's talk publication history for a second, since you brought up Mad Monk. Just for folks that aren't familiar with this stuff or have only read Monster Men, and I've not read Mad Monk. We didn't have to do that for this, and I didn't have time to read on. So but I did read up on this a little bit, and these are companion pieces. Mad Monk is a sequel to this, but it was a planned sequel, so in its way, it's kind of one story and kind of not. The Dark Moon Rising header above Batman and the Monster Men doesn't really make sense until you have both of them, because that was the header to connect them. So they are kind of a piece together.
Hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. And like I remember, having read this now, I remember some of the payoff stuff in the next one, like what we do with Julie Madison. But then before we started the show, you mentioned what happens to her father, and I didn't remember that at all.
Yeah, I had it spoiled for me, and then I figured you knew it already. So sorry for spoiling that, Austin. But I don't
No,
know
it's okay.
when you're gonna get around to reading Mad Monk.
Yeah,
Maybe we
it
should
did bring
just
back
sneak
how
that in
much I like
somewhere,
the.
since we have just read this,
Yeah, we could do that.
if anybody cares.
Yeah,
I've
down.
got a decent group of folks watching right now, so people seem to care about this book. But anyway, this is one of those kind of between the raindrop stories that's kind of filling in continuity. And from what I know, because obviously I haven't read everything, so it's possible that if I went back and did all the major stuff, I would find discrepancies here and there. But this read real authentic and like it fit pretty well into the timeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think there's anything really in year one or Long Halloween, because I always think of them as this is one of the building blocks between those two books.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything that really disconnects them if you were to read them, all in that order.
Well, and chronologically, and you're right. Like it is setting up some stuff for Long Halloween, and it just even like atmospherically feels sometimes like that book, and like a real good blend between that and year one. But as far as the timeline goes, this falls chronologically just between year one and Man Who Laughs. And Man Who Laughs is set up kind of at the beginning of this because we have a headline about Red Hood falling into the vat of acid, and then you'll get Joker's first appearance shortly after this. So that gives. So I think Wagner does a really good job of telling you just with the events of the book where you are in the continuity if you're in the know. How important do you think it is to have a sense of the continuity to look at this? Like, is this a story that stands alone very well, or is it really only interesting as a Between the Raindrops story?
No, I think it works on its own. There's certain things like we keep mentioning Falcone, but we never see him. And I feel like if this is your introduction to this period, you're like, oh, like who's this guy? Like he's got like this presence over the book, but we never really see him. Like there's like this bigger threat that's outside of this, and I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
And
I do too.
Yeah, and I even think,
But I do think I probably enjoyed this more knowing some of what was surrounding it.
oh, for sure. And you would probably appreciate more of that Batman Gordon stuff having read year one.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's the big thing.
And there's some really nice subtle references to things, like and not in a fan service way, but in a world building and coloring the characters kind of way. So there's a place where in internal monologue, Gordon says something about trying to forget about Sarah Essen. There's some really nice kind of references like that to just put you in the time and place of where you're at, where he's still married to his wife right now and they'll get divorced shortly after this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's interesting that there's another commissioner between Loeb and obviously when Gordon will get it.
Yeah, which I think was already in the chronology somewhere, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Like, I don't think Wagner makes up that character, but I don't actually know that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm not sure. But I just think that's cool.
Yeah. Absolutely. But like I said, just authenticity is nice. Like, it's kind of crazy to think this comes out as late as '06. And it's one of those stories where, I mean, I'm just thinking about like where I was in '06. Like I'm 3 years out of high school. It's kind of, it's crazy to think how late this is. And that, some of those stories, if you read them a couple of years before that, you don't have this informing it, which is a testament to this book because it just feels like it fits and it should be there now that you have it.
Mm-hmm. Actually, now that you say that, because I said it's been about 11, 12 years, I think it's more like 2009 that I read this, so
Okay.
It's been even longer.
But doesn't it feel really late?
Mm-hmm.
Like to finally get this.
About it,
it feels like it should have been there. It feels like this should have come out in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think one of the things that's really cool if you were to read year one and then read this is the art's close enough that it like feels more like a sequel in that way too.
Absolutely.
There's specifically one panel where he kicks in one of the Monster Men's legs, and it's just that panel from year one where he's kicking the tree, but he's in the bat suit this time. And I don't know, it's really good. I really like Wagner's art in this.
I do too, and I think it's pretty timeless. And like I said, it feels like almost a mid. Well, I said there's a blend of tones between Year One and Long Halloween. It even feels in some places to me, in some ways, like a midpoint between Miller and Long Halloween. Help me out.
Oh, Tim Sale.
Tim
Sorry,
Sale.
you said that and it made me blank.
Yeah, I just blinked for a second. But
There's also some like Bruce Timm in this too.
yes, particularly with
Darwin Cook.
particularly with Bruce Wayne's character model.
Mm-hmm.
Darwin Cook, I didn't think of, but sure.
Well, I just think of Tim and Darwin Cook as being like kind of cut from the same cloth, like not exactly the same art style, obviously,
but of the same spirit.
But of the same spirit, yeah.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's like when he's in the bat suit, he's Tim Sale, and when he's out of the bat suit, he's Bruce Timm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of Tims going around. That's really fitting too. One's a first name, one's a last name. Austin, would you give us a real brief summary of what happens in this book? And as always with the Comic Vault, we're going to spoil everything.
First, because you have this panel up, this panel really made me laugh, where it's almost like an Irish thug, where he's like, "Oh, Jesus, it's the freaking bat."
Jesus, I had the same thing.
It's the freaking bat. Yeah, so Batman and the Monster Men. So you have a Bruce Wayne who kind of just said it's past year one and he's doing his thing. He's trying to take down Falcone and Maroni. And meanwhile, you have Hugo Strange. He's building his Monster Men while he's doing these eugenics experiments that are funded by Maroni. And Maroni is also in bed with Norman Madison. I was trying to think of his name. It was Julie Madison's father, and Julie Madison's dating Batman at this time.
Impressively, none of that feels too convenient to me.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Like, I'm actually buying all of that interconnectivity where you've got Maroni funding both Hugo Strange and Madison, and that's how these things come together. It's really tightly plotted.
No, I agree. And it leads to my favorite kind of superhero climax, where you have all of these kind of disparate elements all exploding into one another.
Yeah.
But anyways, where was I? So
apologies. I'm reviewing as we go. I'll let you do your summary. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. So yeah, Hugo Strange is trying to get money to pay back Maroni, and so is Madison. And Hugo Strange unleashes his Monster Men onto some of Maroni's men, which kind of kicks off this battle where Maroni's going off on his own, and he knows that Hugo Strange did it, but he can't really prove it. And Batman's also trying to figure out these murders and what these creatures are, and of course he finds them, and then they're way more than he can handle. Let's see, where do I go from there? Julie Madison finds out that her father's in trouble with Maroni, and
it's your real typical loan shark situation.
Yeah, exactly. So Alfred drugs her.
And I know I go to this all the time, but it's Phantasm again.
There is a lot of Phantasm in this book, absolutely.
And this time it isn't like year 3 where it's Phantasm.
Year 2.
Was it year 2? I always do that. But it's not year 2 where it's that informing Phantasm. This is more than a decade after Phantasm.
Mm-hmm. No, I was thinking of Phantasm quite a bit in this book. But yes, then all of these kind of disparate elements bubble up, and
I love this page.
It's so good, yeah. This is also the last of Batman driving just a regular sedan.
Yeah, we see the introduction of the Batmobile proper, which is a totally different car than you've ever seen before, but it's a really cool one. And then Alfred has that kind of great line where he's like, it was like ribbon Batman. He's like, you should put fins on it that look like bat ears. And then he's like, oh crap, you're actually thinking about doing that, aren't you?
Yeah, Batman like trans, he's like.
That was pretty great.
Yeah.
And then Batman's got a look on his face like, I was thinking about doing that. And then he goes, no time for games, Alfred.
I have Monster Men to squash.
And that stuff,
that's pretty much the plot.
That stuff does not read prequelitis to me.
No, because at least for me, like that is the way it's developing, like from year one. I don't know. I think that helps.
Yeah, it feels really natural, and there's only like one or two sort of cutesy fan service lines in this, and they're pretty tame. Where like they don't grab you too hard as like kind of a Smallville sort of thing. But there's one place where I did think it was a little silly when Batman's like, "I'm no Joker." I'm like, okay, sure, you're setting up the Joker, so you gotta be like, "I'm no Joker."
Can you pass the salt? Yeah, that one was a little.
Are you with me on that one?
Yeah.
We get it. Did you feel like anything about the story read a little bit too typical? And does it maybe get away with it considering that it's based on something that came out in 1941? So like it's already kind of archetypal in foundational in the first place.
Yeah, I didn't really find it typical. It's definitely very classic Batman, and I think maybe that's what helps. Is I read this and I'm like, oh yeah, this is very much in line
Just
with how I see the character.
The loan shark situation is pretty typical. It's like if you're
sure.
gonna put a rich but mostly above board kind of altruistic guy in jeopardy like this, he's gonna owe mobsters money.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how
you're Gotham.
That's how you're gonna do that. So if somebody going well, and it's funny because I've been listening a little bit to like financial advice shows and stuff lately, and it's just a thing that I've been getting a little bit more interested in, in looking at like my own financial situation and stuff, and I'm like. Not that I'm in bad shape or anything. It's just I've started like paying more attention to money stuff, and it's just really funny that I've been listening to that kind of stuff lately, and then I read this where I'm like, oh, Madison's an idiot. Like don't owe people money ever if you don't have to.
Oh, it's because he's always drunk though. He's the Tony Stark of the Batman world.
I didn't read it like that. I read it like he's drunk because he owes people money, not the other way around.
No, he is. I'm just joking around, but
I think the book makes a real clear point of that, where he's perfectly sober until he's worried about owing these people money, and then he's just drunk off his ass all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like once the chips are down, that's the only way he can get by.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I found him really sympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And sad, but Adam March, we learned on tonight's ReQuest the cat may consider getting involved with dirty money from organized crime. No,
that's the number one thing they say to not do in those financial shows. They're like, okay, look, guys, don't take money from the mob.
Don't take money from the mob.
Especially if you live in Gotham.
I wouldn't owe anybody money in Gotham.
Mm-hmm.
Like at all, even
no, you owe somebody like $5 and they send the Monster Men after you.
Don't get a mortgage in Gotham. Like don't owe anyone any sort of money. But anyway, just the timing of that was really interesting to me. And so I found him slightly less sympathetic than I would have a week ago when I was like, well, I keep listening to these financial shows that are telling you how to not get in debt in the first place, and this guy's stupid. But there's this interesting thematic thing I was noticing through this, Austin, of characters motivated by pride to make really dumb decisions. Because the two characters... And both of them sympathetic in their own ways, but one of them an honest-to-God villain and antagonist in Hugo Strange. Both Madison and Hugo Strange are under Maroni's thumb and end up owing him money. And they both do it because they are too prideful not to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a thing.
Because Hugo Strange is... in his way, kind of obsessed with image, and upset that he's not able to get past his own genetic I mean, I don't want to even say defects. He's kind of just a regular guy, right? But to him, like these huge terrible genetic defects, he wants to be Batman. Even before he knows he does. And anytime anybody puts him down for his stature, his demeanor, or even his chosen profession, he immediately gets more than defensive about it, and he has this massive pride thing. I mean, like, he literally feeds people to his monsters because they hurt his feelings.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that works.
And Madison does the same thing because he's worried that if he goes through proper channels, then people are gonna realize that his business is not doing as well as they think that it is. And the way he spins it is, I will be ruined. And what it really looks like is it hurts his image. And so I don't know how true it is that he, like, we only get his perspective on that. Is it true he would be ruined, or is it or does it just hurt his feelings?
No, exactly. Yeah, and with Hugo Strange, I think that works really well. I find the whole, striving for perfection thing, but never being able to reach it, really cool as his motivation.
I'm sorry, what?
What?
I was looking at a comment and I missed part of that.
No, it's okay. I just said I really like Hugo Strange's motivation of basically striving for perfection and just never being able to reach it. And you see that both in exactly with what you were saying, as well as, just physically.
Yeah.
Like, he's that way both physically and mentally.
Well, and he can't even reach it through changing other people's genetics like he's trying to. He has that, and again, 1941, he's got that classic mad scientist thing of, if I can't make myself perfect, then I'll create a specimen. That's an important word through this because he uses it with his monsters and then he uses it with Batman. He's like, the perfect specimen. This is what I'm trying to create. Now, am I reading this right? Because I only had a chance to read through this once. Is he trying to grab Batman and also turn him into a monster?
No, he wants to take Batman's DNA and use that to make the perfect specimen. Because it's like, Batman's the perfection. Like, this is what we all need to be. So if I take his DNA and inject it into somebody, then that will make them perfect, and that's how he makes the last Monster Man.
Right. Okay. And I knew he did that, but I couldn't tell if, because like I said, Batman escapes at some point, so I couldn't tell if he was also trying to turn Batman into a monster. What you're saying makes a lot more sense, because like if he thinks Batman's the perfect specimen, why would he screw with that?
No, he's just gonna feed Batman to the Monster Men, and then Batman proves himself as the ultimate being.
Yeah, and then again, eventually, Hugo Strange will have this like hero worship almost obsession with Batman.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, and I really like the ending with him where, like Batman says, he's hiding in plain sight, where he gets everything and just becomes a critic of Batman.
This is a really creepy page.
Oh yeah, the horror of this book I think is really cool.
It's really good.
And that's something I remember carrying over.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on your point.
No, you're fine. That's something I remember carrying over into the next one.
But yeah, what were you talking about with the ending with Hugo Strange? When he hides in plain sight and he goes on TV, and now he's more the Hugo Strange that like in Englehart.
No, and it's almost like a Spider-Man ending where Batman wins in one way and then loses in another. Like, he just won't be able to take Hugo Strange down for now.
Well, and I want to think that at some point Hugo Strange just because the Monster Men don't work out, he can't manipulate genes the way he thinks he's going to, so he just pivots from that to psychology.
No, I mean, his plan's kind of brilliant. He gets away with everything, and then he goes, Batman's a crazy person. So now if Batman attacks him, everyone will go, he's just attacking this guy that's criticizing him on TV.
Well, another thing that this has majorly in common, and I don't want to give away too much about this yet for folks that haven't seen it, but this is another thing that Monster Men has in common with the new show, with Cape Crusader, and also with the movie The Batman, is that you have this early Batman that still makes a lot of mistakes and doesn't always win his missions. And you got this great line at the end of this where Batman goes, if it wasn't for the fact that I rescued Julie Madison, I kind of screwed all of this up.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically just comes out and says, I lost this one, folks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, even visually, like if you go back to that last panel, this Maroni's office is just Falcone's office in the Batman with the big window.
Yeah, that's absolutely
looks
right.
down on the city, and I thought that was really cool. I don't know if that's intentional or if that's just luck of the draw.
Yeah, there's something in the air right now with like this period and early Batman stories, and I don't know how much of it is just Matt Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, that's the stuff he's interested in doing.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, and I read this while listening to the soundtrack of the Batman, and I had Hamish Linklater's voice in my head.
I did
so I had
too.
I had like a mix.
Yeah, I wasn't listening to that music. I've been meaning to listen to that on its own. Honestly, I didn't check to see if it was available yet.
It is on YouTube.
That's cool. I'll have
But I
to
also just
do that
the soundtrack
because I was. That's one of the aspects that I've been most impressed with.
Oh, sorry. Do you mean the soundtrack of the show?
Of the show, yeah.
Oh no, I was listening to the soundtrack of the.
To the Batman. I'm sorry. I thought you meant Cape Crusader.
No. I had like the actor's voice in my head, but I had the Batman music playing.
I heard you wrong. Apologies.
No, you're okay. Which led to the most awesome.
But I did have Linklater in my head this whole time. Something about just the aesthetic of this and the kind of like short sentence monosyllabic. Like it's making me wonder how much, like, is it just that's what I've been watching all week, or are there certain Batman stories where I'm going to start having his voice in my head more? And it's not that far off from what the Batman is doing either.
Mm-hmm. When I find
Pattinson,
at least musically and to a degree with Batman's voice, it does depend on the type of story it is.
Yeah.
Like if I'm reading like a more grand like adventure-y Batman story, I tend to hear the Tim Burton music. But when I'm reading like a detective-y kind of book like this, then it's the Giacchino.
Well, as far as voices go, a lot of people say that they only ever have Conroy in their head, but mine jumps around a bit, and it's kind of a testament to what's really working about that show, that I feel like this guy I'm gonna have like some 20 to 40% of the time now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find I jump back and forth between Pattinson and Conroy. So reading this, I was like, oh, that's cool that I'm hearing his voice. Like, I guess that's going to be another one that's kind of mixed in the stables. And I hear Bruce Greenwood for like an older Batman.
Oh, interesting.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then when you get more kind of adventure-y, swashbuckling, like 60s and 70s type stuff and more absurd stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Then
I hear Christian Bale.
Sure. I knew you were going to say that. No, then I get Brave and the Bold.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say Adam West, but I can see that too.
Yeah, there's something quintessential about what he's doing.
Absolutely. Diedrich Bader's great in that.
Diedrich Bader, yeah, the Hammers of Justice.
And he's Two-Face.
Love that guy.
New show.
Oh yeah, I forgot that was Diedrich Bader. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but we shouldn't talk too much about Cape Crusader yet. I'll talk about why I think that voice works so well when we get into that on Sunday.
Yeah.
Because I was not sure about it at first, and it locked in very quickly. And I have a whole thing about why I think that works.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I'm very glad because I love Midnight Mass, and I'm glad that he ended up being such a good Batman. But we'll get there on.
I still gotta watch that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you'll love it.
Adam Mart says, I mostly hear Conroy, but I think Linklater could get there. Yeah, Tyler Saz Saez. Victor Zaz, Tyler Zayas. Generally, I hear Conroy, but it depends on the era and where the character is at.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean,
Anyway,
there's so many things you can do with Batman, as you've said a million times.
yeah. So, how do you feel, just real quick, about the length of this? Like, is 6 issues right? Like, is there any? Do you have any pacing issues with it at all? Because I thought it was pretty well paced.
So 3 issues in, when we got to Batman being thrown into the cell, in my head I was like, oh, this feels like we're kind of wrapping up from what I remember. Like, there's still 3 more issues. And then as I kept reading, I was like, oh, no, this makes perfect sense. I thought it was paced pretty well. I like the kind of twists and turns it takes. And it has just the right amount of getting things done in like a pulpy sort of way and stopping to smell the roses. I think Wagner's got a good balance on that.
That's a great way to put that. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Where like you can have moments where there's very little dialogue and it's just Batman fighting the monster men or something like this, and then 5 pages later you'll have like a whole scene where Bruce is talking to Julie Madison and she's questioning her kind of belief in him and stuff like that.
Yeah. So it's manipulating its pacing.
Yeah.
Pretty well. Like it's sort of the prose equivalent of varying up your lengths of sentences.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say it's more internal monologue than I needed much of the time.
Fair enough. Did you like how it kind of jumps around, or do you think it was maybe too much? Or
Honestly, I was okay with it.
oh, okay.
If I was gonna take one, because it was a little bit curious, the sheer number of characters whose heads we get into and how often. It's pretty much because I said earlier internal monologue with Gordon because he says something about Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure we get in his head, right?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, but it's not very often. So Gordon is probably the character you most could lose with that. Maybe it's the argument for it is connective tissue with year one. Maybe that's the main reason to do it, I guess. But barring Gordon, because for a second I couldn't even remember for sure if we did that. Because it's Batman obviously, and it's Hugo Strange,
both Madison and it's Gordon.
Madison and it's her father. I think Julie Madison is the one you could probably leave. I think that's the one you could drop.
That's fair.
And the reason I say that is because Batman is obviously, the glue holding it together, and he's got some interesting character parallels and mirroring going on with Hugo Strange with their backgrounds, and they're both being orphans, and one of them is super rich and one of them is super poor, and we could go into that. It's all kind of obvious, but there's enough good like thematic character paralleling going on there that I think you do want to get in Batman's head in this story. And it also would just be a little bit weird to have a story where you have multiple people's heads that we get into, and one of them is not Batman. But I guess you could leave him in the background, sort of like the new show is doing.
Batman he's an NPC. He's got no internal monologue.
But I almost would rather it be a triad of internal monologues because of the ways in which Hugo Strange and Julie Madison's father are kind of like oddly antagonists. Not that Madison is a bad guy, but just like he is another vessel for making a lot of bad things happen. Like he creates problems in this story, and he and Hugo Strange are both again connected to Maroni, and in that same way. So like, I think the three of them. I think that's all you needed to do.
Mm-hmm. I do like Julie Madison's internal monologue, just because I think her story is kind of tragic, and that
it is.
She's kind of doing her own thing, and this strong, independent woman, if you will. And
I agree. I just don't know that we needed to really be with her to still find her as sympathetic and appreciate all of that. I don't know.
Well, that's what I was going to say is also, like, you have the whole thing with both her father and Bruce Wayne that I think kind of links them together a little bit better, where they both are blowing her off to
True.
varying degrees and lying to her. So it's like the
Yeah.
two most important people in her life aren't even authentic.
You know what? That's a terrific point. Yeah, you wouldn't get that perspective without
Yeah,
listening
I
to her
just think
talk
you
about
lose
it.
something taking that out. But I
Okay.
also get where you're coming from if you want like just that kind of trinity.
Yeah, but like now I'm of two minds about it. Like
Mhm.
you make a really terrific argument going the other way, absolutely. And now that you say that, like I did appreciate all of that.
Mhm. Yeah, Gordon's probably the easiest one you'd be able to lose, but
And
I
it's
don't know,
not.
I like Gordon. It only comes up like once or twice. Like
This
it's
is a
small.
very minor. Well, that's kind of my point, though, is
No,
that
exactly. That's what I mean.
we
Like
don't
you can
really need it. Um,
take or leave it.
this is a super. This whole thing is a super minor criticism. I'm more complaining less about the number of people's heads we get into with this, and more just I think some of it's overwritten.
No, that's fair. It's very purple prose in that way.
Well, it is that kind of story. So
Yeah.
like, I don't even mind it being purple prose. I just think there's some sentences that could be cut. I just don't think you need all of it.
hmm No, that's fair.
When you get to the end, I was actually shocked by how happy of an ending this turned out to be, especially with Batman sort of losing. I and
hmm
and again, I know that there's a follow up with Mad Monk, and it will be more tragic. But I'm wondering when I read that if I'll wonder if we shouldn't have just done the tragic thing from that story at the end of this.
hmm
So I'm curious about that when I read that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I did wonder, not remembering a lot of that stuff, if we were gonna do it here, and then obviously we don't. So,
Well, and I also wondered if we might just because I didn't know if anybody dealt with Julie Madison after this. So I was along for the ride enough where I could wonder things like, does she survive? Does her father survive? Does she find out that Bruce Wayne is Batman? Do we go
mhm,
that far phantasm with it? And we don't.
mhm. No, but it does feel like we're kind of building the seeds of that. Like you have scenes like this one that you have on screen right now.
Yeah, which is a great
And-
scene.
yeah, and I don't remember fully where they go with it, but I do remember how they write her out in Mad Monk.
Yeah, the biggest surprise to me, and I don't know if this is really a misstep, uh, but there was what I thought was a pretty clear mistake that we were building Batman to that was going to be like a big part of his arc and maybe give him this big opportunity, uh, if not for change, to look back and go, oh, I should probably. Well, I guess it would be an opportunity for change. I shouldn't do this again. I should probably put people I care about ahead of the mission sometimes. There's this moment where Batman says to Alfred, I can't. Yes, sort of like the end of '89. I can't go on with that right now. He says, I can't worry about what's going on with Julie Madison's father owing the loan shark money because he doesn't realize that. And maybe it's even a little bit convenient that Maroni's name doesn't come up with all of that because Batman doesn't realize that he's dealing with Maroni all around, like with both of these things. So he's like, I can't deal with Maroni. I got to deal with Maroni because like he doesn't realize that. And so he goes, there's this, and it's understandable. It's like Maroni's got these giant 10 feet tall monsters that are gonna terrorize the city like Toka and Razor in Ninja Turtles 2, and I've got to deal with that. I can't worry about Julie Madison's father in trouble with a loan shark. I really thought where that was going was he goes to solve the bigger situation, and in the interim, it gets either Julie Madison or her father killed. That's where I thought all of that was going.
Almost like a Daredevil Elektra thing.
Yeah.
hmm it very well could have. Like I said, this is
I think he got really lucky that it doesn't.
yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because well, because like Cape Crusader again, this is kind of a colder Batman starting out isn't who's really cut off from his emotions and isn't thinking so much about the way he's affecting other people.
hmm
And he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. Where like, yeah, he's dating a girl, but he's putting Batman ahead of all of that. And so I was a little surprised that setup happened. And then that's not where we went with it.
Hmm. No, absolutely. Yeah, I'd have to remember how they handle that in Mad Monk to really kind of, come down on where they should have gone with that
Yeah,
here. But
because maybe they're setting that up.
hmm
And when you get to Mad Monk, that is the point. Like, I don't know. I've got to read that. But
yeah, because I did like how it played here, but that is absolutely fair. Like I
also,
said,
the
oh,
cover
sorry.
of this issue was misleading to me in getting me to that place also. Because knowing that this cover was here, when he says that, I'm like, oh, he's going to get her killed. And then that's not what happens.
That's just straight up like a universal monster image.
Is this image not reminding you of the Bob Kane drawing
I was
from
just about to
from
say,
Need a little more gore under the fangs, though.
well, yeah, it's exactly how Bob Kane imagined Batman version C to look.
Well, and I can't remember now. Isn't it true that Bob Kane's name is on that, but he didn't actually draw it? I can't remember it.
Oh, I mean, isn't that true of most things Bob Kane
It is
drew?
Bob. I knew you were gonna say that. It is Bob Kane. And then we have the idea in the background of Gordon is working with an independent vigilante that is more than technically breaking the law, and like how long can he get away with doing that? But it's very in the background. Like it feels like that's not even a big thematic crux of the thing so much as just again putting it in the chronology.
Yeah, because it's hard to remember a lot of what happens in Mad Monk for me. I wonder if that's very much like the forefront, and like we're just setting it up here.
I thought that like Gordon's new boss, like I thought that he kind of makes a decent argument for why Gordon shouldn't be doing this.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Like there's no arguing with I really liked the discussion about how no matter what good things Batman has done for the city, he is again more than technically breaking the law. Like by any metric, the way he's dealing with criminals is not legal. Is not what you're supposed to do.
Well, I like how Gordon's mic drop is basically like, "Yeah, I know you're corrupt," and then he leaves.
Yeah, right. So you don't have any leg to stand on there.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you feel like we were, and again, hopefully I'm not giving away too much about the show. Again, Cape Crusader does the same thing, which I was also surprised by. It feels like we're almost avoiding the signal.
Maybe they do an origin for it in Mad Monk.
There might be a place, or there might be a place in the chronology that it's already established, and I don't know where that is. Like in the official chronology.
The Joker one. You said it earlier. Man Who Laughs.
Maybe that's where it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be there too.
But then what's weird about that is, so he's got a more efficient way to get a hold of Batman. Because here he's got a radio that he can just immediately...
He's got the Batwave.
He's got this... Yeah, he just presses... That's great. He just presses a button. He's talking to Batman. And then and then that would make it kind of prequelitis. Because then later it's like, I'm going to much less efficiently shine a thing at clouds and hope that you notice it.
Well, there's the part in Gordon's internal monologue, because he basically just gets chewed out by the commissioner for working for Batman.
Yeah.
And his response is to call Batman.
Yeah.
And there's the part in his internal monologue where he's like, I like pressing this. I love calling him.
Yeah, yeah. He was like, I've been tempted over and over again for weeks to press this button, and damn it, I'm gonna do it now.
So basically, Batman will at some point be like, "Oh my God, this guy won't stop calling me. Here's a light. Shine it in the sky." Do that instead.
Okay, I can't be the only person thinking this.
Mm-hmm.
Julie Madison looks like April O'Neil sometimes.
Oh, I was not thinking that, but I mean, she's got the yellow coat.
Yeah, she kind of looks like April O'Neil sometimes. Well, doesn't April sometimes have red hair? Like, she kind of looks like her.
Yeah, I think in some versions. Did the Turtles drug April O'Neil like Alfred? This is the exact opposite of Burden Alfred, where instead of being like, "Oh, let you into the cave," this Alfred's like, "Oh, I'll just drug you."
Yeah, he should have used Adam West's like bat sleep. He should have pulled out the spray and just been like, psst.
Hmm.
There's something about that that seems less icky than drugging a person, even though it's the same
The same
thing.
thing.
Because it is drugging you. It's just doing it. It's just not orally.
Hmm. Well, because you sent me the
Why
panel
does one
today.
seem worse than the other one?
When you sent me the panel today of of that shot of Bruce Wayne holding her, and Alfred's like, "Oh, you're drugging your girlfriend, Bruce."
Oh, it's so good.
And then it got even funnier when I read it, and I was like, "Wait a minute, Alfred was the one who drugged
Alfred's the
her."
one that does it. And did you have what I did where at first I thought it was the real typical, like, the girl that can't handle everything that's happening, so she just faints? Like, that's what I thought happened at first.
Oh no, I think probably because you sent me that too beforehand.
Oh, okay. Well,
So
I
I
didn't
was
realize you
already.
hadn't got there yet. I should have sent you that.
I mean, I've read this book before. It's not a big deal.
But I thought we were doing that.
Hmm. Oh no, they're drugging her.
You know, like in Power Rangers and White Light, when Kimberly realizes that the White Ranger is Tommy, even though it's the most obvious possible thing in the world. He takes his helmet off and she faints. And then she's just lying on the floor. And it's like 5 minutes before anybody thinks to go check on her, make sure she doesn't have a concussion. It was a different time.
Yep.
Anyway, well, you haven't really talked that much about the actual, like, Monster Men portion of this. Like I said, this was kind of more just a plot device to me than anything.
Hmm. No, I mean, I like the action scene where Batman gets trapped with them. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And he's like partly drugged too, and he's got to fight these big creatures that he can't deal with, and he doesn't have any of his gadgets. Oh, that's really cool. It's like a thrilling action sequence.
Oh, there's the car. I actually like this Batmobile quite a bit.
It is a nice Batmobile. It does kind of need the wings to complete the look, but
Well, I think that's the
it
point
is.
of the Alfred
Yeah,
line is like
absolutely.
we know it's not really the only thing I would change about it is I think I don't know what you call it, but the front piece is a little much.
Oh, see, I was gonna say I like that it's basically one of those Batmobiles where it's got like the face on the front, but not as far
Oh,
as that.
sure. That's
Uh,
fair.
but I can see where you're coming from. And then also with the Monster Men, I just thought the climax was really thrilling. I like that you have
Yeah.
Batman both trying to take out these monsters and these gangsters that he has to protect, but like is also fighting them. And then you have Norman Madison mixed up with it. So I just thought all that's really thrilling, where he's got to kind of keep all of these different elements that are coming together, kind of connected. Like it's way bigger than what he was expecting going in.
Yeah, no, it's great, and yeah, I get your point. It's interesting to see. It's fun to see Batman overwhelmed like that.
Yeah, and 'cause like I said, I was listening to the Batman soundtrack while reading this, and it made it way cooler when I got to this part. And it's the part where he walks in and he's got like the uh, whatever they're called, the things with the balls on them, right before he fights the Monster Men in the house. And right when I got to that part, the
Oh, it's on the tip of my
Batmobile
tongue.
theme
Yeah,
like kicked in from that movie, and I was like, yes, this is awesome.
I I'm just forgetting right now in the moment. Why does he have a gun holster?
Well, he takes it out and shoots gas, so it's like some sort of gas gun.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay,
But he wastes it on Maroni's men.
because it's weird. Because I don't know, like, I guess he shows up with that, but didn't have it when he lost his belt earlier. Because you got that part where Hugo Strange is figuring out what Batman is all about, and he gets fat. And I love this. He's starting to build his fascination with Batman. Like, he's so prepared, but he doesn't carry firearms.
Mm-hmm.
And
He's
then
got these wonderful toys.
and he's got this gas gun. So I guess he didn't have that then.
Mm-hmm. No, I think he brings this with him because there's that little moment where he's fighting the Monster Men earlier, and some of his gas bombs like go off, and he says something like it's not enough to knock them out, but I think he brings it with the gas gun with him so that he has something a little more strong to take them out, and then he uses it on Maroni's men because they're killing the monster men.
I don't know about you. I don't need the like practical realism of how does it all fit in the belt. Like I'm really fine with him not having to bring that. He just pulls it out of the belt. Like I don't need that. Like I would be fine with him. Just I wouldn't even question it.
Mm.
If you pulled that out
Yeah.
and you just had it already, like in the belt somehow, I would not question that.
But then I don't think you ever see the holster again after that.
No, maybe I sold the Monster Man idea a little short because there are too many places where I don't have a good visual reference for just how big they are. So when Batman, like the panel I showed earlier, when one of them is coming through the front of that house, like that's really cool because he's so huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
Very
I feel
often I
like
just don't have a good visual reference for just how big they are.
I feel like they're maybe halfway between a regular human and like the original King Kong. They're not that quite big, but like they are really big.
You know, I mentioned Secret of the Ooze earlier. There's actually that moment where I like in that movie when Shredder says "Go play, have fun." Like we practically could have had that line. when Hugo Strange is like yeah, now you can go be free and go rampage, and I was like, oh, it's exactly that scene from Ninja Turtles 2.
Go eat, have fun.
Go eat, have fun.
Yes, have some.
Also, Hugo Strange drop kicking a man is one of the most amazing images in comics.
Well, especially because he doesn't just kick him, like it's the most over the top kick.
Well, yeah, and then just all the choreography that you see him, like he does a front flip, and I think the point of I don't think it's supposed to come off silly, but it comes off really silly because I think the point of it is supposed to be you saw him training at the beginning and he can do all of this really impressive physical stuff even though he is held back from being full on Batman by his genetics. But I mean, like he's closer than we ever thought Hugo Strange could get.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a Power Ranger in this panel.
I also like that his motivation is just, oh no, there's a man here. I don't know him. He probably works for Maroni. I better get out of here.
Better kick him. We should go ahead and wrap up, but I found the last page a little awkward. Where I just couldn't decide exactly what I was supposed to take from it. Oh, also, real quick, I gotta mention this. I don't know why, but this bottom like panel in a panel with the helicopter explosion and then Batman shielding his face, I've seen that a lot. I've never actually read through this book before, but that panel I'm really familiar with for some reason.
Oh, that panel definitely is an image we go to a lot.
Why? But it shows up all the time for some reason.
Because it's cool.
I don't know. Cool. Well, it's like
like
that
the Dracula thing, right? Like,
well, I was gonna say it's that Bruce Timm pose. Because Bruce Timm has him do that constantly.
Yeah, absolutely.
If there's an explosion, he's shielding. Maybe that's what it is. Where like that's so indicative of like a lot of people's favorite Batman. Where we just use that a lot because we're all used to seeing him do that. I don't know.
And it's just a cool image. Like it's very Creature of the Night.
But you get to the end and it's like the end of some animated series episodes where you'll have like a villain that's looking over his shoulder now because Batman might be coming and he's scary and terrifying. But in this case, it's Julie Madison's father who just like doesn't realize that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and I don't really know what it's getting at with this.
Yeah, I mean, because he's in the climax and Batman sees him and says his name. So,
yeah,
I guess he just thinks that Batman knows that he's been in bed with criminals, and as Hugo Strange is kind of fear mongering, he's gonna ruthlessly. I couldn't say that. He's gonna come after all of the criminals, no matter what. He's never gonna stop. And
it's just a weird perspective thing because we know that's not true, and furthermore, we saw Batman go to Hugo Strange and ask where this guy is, or no, I guess it was Maroni, and like he's trying to save this guy, so like,
Yeah, it's just from his perspective, like he doesn't know that. He just thinks that Batman knows who he is and knows that he's been with Maroni.
I guess my point is, it's not a weird page; it's a weird page to end on. Like that's what you're left with. It's like it's a little awkward to me. It's like this guy's scared of Batman. We know he has no reason to be scared of Batman. The end. It's a really weird like last page, right? Because it feels like, and of course from his perspective, it makes sense that this would be like a scary cliffhanger. But the rest of us know that he's fine.
Yeah, I guess it.
And so I would have had something else after it.
I guess it just depends on what they do with that in the next book. Like that's maybe a place where these aren't entirely disconnected books.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that it probably reads fine if you read Mad Monk right after it. But just this by itself, it's like imagine if that was a coda in a Batman animated series episode. You'd be like, oh, ooh, okay. Thought that was kind of odd.
Julia, what would it take, or how much would it cost for your father to get a good night's sleep?
That's what I was thinking about. Yeah. Now there's a riddle for you.
Now there's a monster man for you, Julia.
But Bill Mills, thanks for requesting this. I'm glad I finally read it, and like I said, I want to do the follow up.
Yeah, and it was good to reread it. Thanks for putting it on our path.
We got really lucky where this fell. This is perfect with this new Batman show. It's so good.
Now put the Monster Men in the second season.
I was gonna say, I know you really want that, and I would be surprised if they didn't, because I thought Hugo Strange would show up in that first season.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no way he doesn't.
Yeah,
right?
Do that and the Monster Man. I don't know, because I feel like you would think Bruce Timm would go to Hugo Strange more, but he's only in one episode of TAS.
Yeah, but to your point earlier, the 80th anniversary thing was that, and looks like this show to some degree. So, like, I'd be really surprised if he didn't. I'll go even farther, because I think the fact that he's only in one episode is a big argument for he'll probably do it, because they've been trying to go to things that they wanted to do in the animated series but never got to, or things that they've got different takes on. I'll go even farther. I think again, I'll try not to give too much away, but I think with like Harvey Dent being in more than one episode of that first season, I think Hugo Strange could be your more overarching villain for your second season.
I hope so.
I'll go even that far. I bet he's not in one episode. I bet he's in 3 or 4.
That'd be awesome. I'd love that.
But I also was expecting certain villains that we saw in this season to come back, and they didn't. It was a little more episodic than I expected.
Yeah, and I was really glad about that.
In some ways, more serialized than I thought it would be, and in some ways, a lot more episodic than I thought it would be.
No, absolutely.
It was less of a blend of that than X-Men 97 was.
Yeah, and
which was like a real season overarching kind of story with some other little stories in between it. This was the opposite of that.
No, I was so happy. It's the type of TV I want. So
yeah, sure. I'm mostly just reporting, honestly. Like I'm not criticizing that at all. Okay, so next time
you're not giving your sign flip yet.
No, I'm not.
Saying
next time we're doing something I've never heard of that I don't think most of our viewers will know what this is, but it was requested, so we're gonna do it. And I think the only way we can watch this is like YouTube. But this comes from Jeff Niederhofer, and he asked us to do an old Canadian comedy called Willie and Floyd. I know nothing about this.
I've never heard of it.
And I'm assuming he picked it because you're Canadian.
I hope so.
And he wouldn't be the first person who's done that. So we got to do at least a couple episodes of that.
Okie dokie.
And hopefully we can get our hand. I last week, seeing this on the list, I went to see where we could get that, and it looked like some of it was on YouTube. So hopefully that will work out.
Okay, well, that's good. Damn Canada.
And then we go back to comics after that.
Ooh.
For 2 weeks, it looks like.
Ooh.
Yeah. Is that exciting?
That's exciting.
If folks watching right now, thanks a lot for watching live. Thanks for watching after the fact. If you would like to make a request for the ReQuest, patreon.com/geekvolution, the $15 tier lets you pick a movie or comics. We really like comics. And you can pick a miniseries, a graphic novel, or you can pick the pilot for a TV show, or you can pick comics. And we'll get to it as soon as we can. We've still got quite a backlog, but we're working through it. And we appreciate all of our requesters. In the meantime, Austin and I will be back tomorrow night with the Superhero Rewind Commentary Project. We're doing Spider-Man 2. Join us at 9 o'clock Central Time for that. And if you are on Patreon right now and you're watching live and you want to hang out with me and Austin and Brandon, who is waiting patiently over there in my Star Trek area, you can also become a $2 patron. If you're not currently a patron, patreon.com/geekvolution. Hang out with us over there. We're going to do an After Dark here in about 10 minutes. In the meantime, once again, I was Captain Logan. This was Austin, and we'll see you later, folks.
See ya.